Hey everybody, Chief Meteorologist Brad Pedovich here. We got to talk about this severe weather setup for the middle of the week. And it's interesting. In the Carolinas, where I am located, where a lot of my followers are, probably not as big a risk as what we're going to see in the middle of the country, but I'll talk about all of it because look at this system. This is a really impressive low pressure system, just a bowling ball moving into the west coast. It's going to move across the country and be quite a significant severe weather outbreak because what's going to happen is that's a lot of wind energy in the atmosphere. When you have this type of wind energy this time of year, which is why we get so much severe weather, and you bring in low-level, warm, humid air, that's what causes severe weather outbreaks. The crossover of the strong wintertime jet stream coupled with the spring to summer warm, humid air at the surface, that's the fuel. Oftentimes, I think it's a misnomer. A lot of people will say, it's cold air and warm air clashing. That's really not what causes severe weather. It's like a chicken and an egg thing. Oftentimes, the wind energy and the clashing of that jet stream with the warm, humid air at the surface is the result at the end is a warm and cold clash, but it's really that wind energy and the warm, humid air below it that is causing all of the severe weather, not the cold air per se. So when you see this, you're really looking for that strong jet stream. That's why some of the worst tornado outbreaks occur in the spring, because you have the winter jet stream and then you start to get that warm, humid air at the surface, which is the fuel for storms. So this is what's going to happen through the week, and I'll show you real quickly. That system moves into the plains tomorrow. We start to see some isolated severe weather, and then we get into Friday, and one of the bigger medium to higher threat days that I've seen. Now, if you look at SPC outlooks, obviously they use different wording and phrasing and colors. I use something that makes a little more sense. And again, this is the same outlook. We just make it easier to understand. You see the area of highlight right here in the red. That's the area we're watching. I really think this area is probably going to be a little bit more prime than what we're seeing in there. So if we see this kind of shift tomorrow, you might see it shrink down a little bit. Remember, this was a day 3 outlook. Then it's a day 2, then a day 1. It starts getting narrow focus. But we're going to see a pretty nasty squall line move east over time and into the eastern half of the country. And just to show you the wind speeds, this is the low-level jet, we call it, 850 millibars or 5,000 feet. Look at the wind that this thing starts pulling up as it ejects out of the west and moves into the plains. Those are 60, 75, 80. I mean, it's off my chart, actually. I'm going to have to build a new color table for this, but that is some crazy wind energy. So what you worry about in the severe weather outbreak, yes, tornadoes are a possibility, but any thunderstorms, any kind of front, anything that can mix these strong winds down to the surface is going to cause damaging winds. So overall, the bigger threat is going to be damaging winds, and then embedded in those damaging winds will be tornadoes. But trust me, the winds will impact far more people than the tornadoes. So you prepare for power outages, a lot of trees down. And so if you're in the Carolinas and you're watching me and you have friends or family in this part of the country, make sure they're ready for this late Thursday into Friday, because there could be extensive tree, power line, and structural damage from straight line winds. And that means make sure everything's charged up, have the severe weather safety kit ready to go. Now in the Carolinas, my concern is, yes, this will be weakening, but that's still a boatload of wind energy heading into the Carolinas on Saturday. And while the storm could be weakening from a thunderstorm standpoint, there's still a lot of wind energy in the atmosphere. So anything that's going is possibly going to produce some severe weather. Let's quickly look at the tornado parameters just to show you. Yeah, there's definitely some there. We definitely have a lot of potential energy and helicity, we call it, in the atmosphere. So if some storms could get going, there's certainly going to be the potential for tornadoes. Notice how I'm highlighting this area. The risk was more in here. That's why I think maybe you might see a little shift to the west with the outlook coming up tonight. You can see the tornado parameter weakens quite a bit as it pushes into the Carolinas, but it's still there. Another parameter I look at quite often is thunderstorm fuel. It's CAPE for all the meteorologists and weather geeks out there. It's convectively available potential energy. It's basically fuel for storms. That's a pretty good surge. You get that jet stream with that much CAPE coming north, you're going to get what we call a QLCS, or a squiggly squall line, which is all about Boeing segments, wind damage, and embedded tornadoes. You can see that threat into the Carolinas. There's enough there, folks, that we could see a strong storm or two on Saturday. So I'm getting a little more concerned that Saturday we might end up seeing something a little more robust than what we're seeing right now. So one of the parameters or indices we look at is, let's take that storm fuel and let's combine it with helicity, which is basically rotation in the updraft. and we'll get a thing called the Energy Helicity Index, or EHI. You combine them and it gives you an index that kind of shows everything together. And you could see, boy, that's pretty high. You're in the medium to high range, some red in there over Oklahoma, Kansas, North Texas. Then it pushes east, and some of that stays pretty potent through the Mississippi River Valley and into the Tennessee Valley, and then moves into the Carolinas, and thankfully it's lower, but it's still there. So what is this thing going to look like? Well, let's show you the Futurecast. This is what most people are used to looking at. Let me delete some frames here real quickly. You see that big monstrous low moving into the plains, and you can see right there. Now, you see the individual storms that are going to be firing up here, but remember, there's strong winds here, so there's blowing dust. There's probably going to be, potentially some grass fires, wildfires. I mean, the wind is going to be absolutely off the charts with this system. It continues to push east, and look at that, man. Really, when you get into Arkansas, parts of Missouri, southern Illinois, that's where you have, boy, the combination of the wind energy and the strongest convection or thunderstorms that are able to tap into that wind energy and translate it down to the ground where we live. So that's where through Memphis, and then you see that line. It's a squall line marching through Tennessee, and then heads to the mountains early Saturday morning, and then there's enough there to hold together and wind energy to move through the Carolinas before we get to the afternoon hour. So let me show you the close-up view on Friday. I'm going to show you, I'm focusing on the Carolinas for my Carolina folks here, but you can see Friday night into Saturday morning. So early Saturday morning, 6 a.m., here comes that line of storms. Starts pushing into the foothills and then into the Piedmont. And again, it's a broken line. It's not a lot there, but remember all that wind energy. So while that doesn't look super impressive, that's going to be probably producing some really strong winds and maybe knocking down power lines and trees. So the wind threat is the concern here. Not that we can't rule out a tornado, but I really think overall the wind threat is going to be pretty potent here. And even outside of those storms, we could have strong straight line winds. So it's definitely a day we've got to pay attention to, and if you have friends or family in the middle of the country where it looks like it's going to be a lot worse, if you have, family, friends, colleagues that are going to be in this area in red and orange on Friday, Thursday night to Friday, make sure they're staying weather aware, because this is a potent system. The wind energy is really what catches my attention as a meteorologist. That is a lot of wind energy, and any storm that can focus that and bring it down to the surface, we're going to see some damage. I'll post another vlog tomorrow. We will be in day 2, so we should have some more updates as we get closer to the weekend. Stay safe, stay weather aware, and I'll have an update tomorrow.